The US House of Representatives passes the bill to end the longest government shutdown in history. The bill will now head to President Donald Trump's desk to be signed into a law. Wall Street indices overnight ended mixed, with the Dow closing above 48,000 for the first time. The Asian markets are trading with modest gains, while the GIFT Nifty is indicating a subdued start for our own markets. Crude oil prices fall to a 3-week low after 3 sessions of gains as OPEC revises its outlook to reveal a supply surplus in the third quarter. Meanwhile, gold prices have gained nearly 2% on optimism about the US government reopening. Tata Steel reported a good quarter led by the India business. The India EBITDA per ton beats estimates despite weak pricing in the quarter. And in key earnings today, watch out for numbers from Eicher Motors and Hero MotoCorp, where strong volumes are expected to aid revenue in the second quarter. And India's retail inflation cools to a record low of 0.25% in October, in line with CNBC TV18's poll. Food inflation hovers in negative territory for the 5th straight month. The ball is now in the RBI's court on the question of a rate cut. The Union Cabinet approves schemes worth 45,060 crore rupees to support exporters, particularly MSMEs and other sectors facing tariff challenges. The package includes export promotion mission with an outlay of 25,060 crore and 20,000 crore towards the credit guarantee scheme for exporters. The cabinet has also condemned the Red Fort terror attack, reaffirming India's zero tolerance policy on terrorism. The penultimate trading day of the week promises to be an action-packed one as well. You're watching Power Breakfast here on CNBC TV18 in the Mumbai News Centre. I'm Hormas Fatakia. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets have started off for trade today. And it's a fairly mixed picture, although most of the indices have reversed their losses from the initial ticks. The Hang Seng still below the flat line, as is the Taiwanese index, but the Nikkei in Japan, which was trading lower by around 0.5%, has reversed those losses now and is trading in the green. The Kospi in South Korea also is trading in the green. The bigger takeaway is the fact that the Dow futures and the US futures in general have reversed losses. They were down around 50 to 100 points at the start, but now are trading with gains of 70 to 80 points currently, and that is after the US House of Representatives passed the bill to end the longest shutdown in history. But of course, we'll talk about that in greater detail over the course of the show. I pull up the GIFT Nifty and give you an idea of how our own markets are likely to start off. Well, after almost 400 points gains in the last 3 sessions, it's only par for the course that you're expecting a slightly subdued start for today's session, which also happens to be the weekly expiry of the sensex contracts. That's to set you up for today's trade. Our team of researchers is here with the trade setup, the stocks that are likely to be in the news, and of course, the setup on the F&O side of things as well. Firstly, Gaurav joins in to get all the market cues that we need to keep an eye out for today. Gaurav, good morning. What are some of the important things that you're watching out for today?
Well, as when we look at Nifty actually ended up with 0.7% gain in the last trading session. In fact, it is on a winning streak, but when we look at the levels today, it can remain choppy in the range of around 25,800 to 26,000. And 2 major things that we should be keeping an eye out on. First is that inflation print. Now that came in at around 0.25%. It is actually lowest, and when we look at the inflation trend, it has been lower than 4% mark that RBI had guided for the last 9 months. So that is something that we will be watching out for, specifically for the banking stocks, because this will also leave some headroom for speculation of rate cuts. And second is that Union Cabinet, now they have approved around 25,000 crores of outlay for export promotion mission, and at the same time they have also approved 20,000 crores of additional credit guarantee for eligible exporters and MSMEs, specifically in the areas of textile, leather, gems and jewelry. So definitely let's watch out on these sectors. On the trade side, our sources told us that President Putin will be visiting India on 5th and 6th December. So let's see if that is something that we should be focusing on, because on the trade side, there are a lot of things which are happening. Another factor that we should be watching out for is the Bihar election exit poll. Now, some of the exit polls suggest that there is a narrow lead for NDA. So that is something that also will affect the market. Remember, tomorrow is the day of counting. So let's wait for that as well. When we look at the stock specifically, yesterday we saw Sirma, Max Financial Services, Federal Bank, Mahindra & Mahindra, all of these stocks were at all-time high levels. So let's watch out on these stocks as well, if they will remain or sustain this momentum. momentum. And lastly, when we look at the US market, recently we got that the House has now passed the bill to end the nation's biggest government shutdown after 43 days. So let's also watch out for the cues from US markets, because this will also put things in motion now. When we look at Asian markets, we are getting some kind of mixed reviews, and as Gift Nifty shows, we are seeing some kind of 20 to 30 points of decline. So definitely could be a choppy day, but better days are ahead is what we can say from the markets now.
Gaurav, thank you for that update. Over to Vinny now. List out the stocks that should be on your radar today. Vinny, good morning. It's a long list, but what do you have for us?
Hi, Urmas. Good morning. A long list. But before I start with earnings, let's just keep an eye out on Vedanta, the demerger case that has come in. The NCLT concluded its hearing. They've reserved their judgment on the government plea objecting to Vedanta demerger. And there are some concerns that they've raised. So maybe a slight bit of a negative move that we could see for Vedanta. But as of now, the judgment has been reserved. The next, and let's start with the earnings then. Tata Steel is what we'll keep an eye out on. We're expecting a positive move there. The net profits of the company have seen a sharp jump up. Revenues up by 9%. Even the operational performance has been strong. EBITDA margins at 15.2% versus 11.4%. Good numbers, beating the street estimate, and even EBITDA per ton is better than what one was expecting. So positive move there. Senco Gold, we are seeing a growth of around 2.4% in terms of revenues. Margins have seen a very good improvement of around 6.9% versus 3.5% last year. Improvement in terms of profitability. So muted growth, but that was below what others in the industry are doing. EBITDA and margin have seen a sharp jump up because of that low base there. Honasa Consumers, good set of numbers again coming in from the company in Q2. 16% growth in terms of revenues. EBITDA gain this time versus a loss last year. And profits also there. We're seeing a profit this time of 39 crores versus a loss last year of 18.5 crores. KNR Construction, weak set of numbers that's coming from the company. Revenues down by around 67%. EBITDA is down by 77% and margins at 29% versus 44% approximately last year. GNFC, a good set of numbers from the company, good in terms of operational performance as well as in terms of top line growth as well. AG Infra Engineering, profits of the company down by around 35%. Revenues have remained muted at 0.2% and margins have seen a slight bit of a contraction. So red is what we could watch out for here. Data patterns, that's another one. Good numbers that is coming from the company, but margins are impacted mainly by the significantly higher material cost that the company has seen. Deepak Nitrite, weak set of numbers here as well. Revenues down 6.4%, profits down sharply by around 38%, and margin seeing a contraction of around more than 300 basis points. 10.7% is what the margin has come in at, as well as Cohance Life Science, weak numbers there as well. Revenues down, profits down for the company. Nazara Tech, on the other hand, good set of numbers from the company, despite the real money gaming one-time impairment loss that they've taken there. Good numbers from the company.
Vinny, thank you for that long list of stocks that should be on your radar. And mind you, it's a long list of stocks for the earnings season today as well. Lastly, Sudarshan joins in with cues from the FNO space. Sudarshan, good morning. You're up almost 400 points on the Nifty now in the last 3 sessions. But does the FNO data indicate a move towards 26,000?
So it's been a good week. So for the last 3 days, we have been gaining. Will it be fourth straight day? That's a key question. So I won't be surprised if there is a minor profit booking at these levels. But in the broader sense, upward trajectory remains intact and range for Nifty remains between 25,600 to 26,000. Also on the global cues front, long pending bill to end the government shutdown is passed by US House. Now, as far as flows are concerned, FIs remain on the sell side. But as we saw yesterday, the quantum of selling figure has come down in both cash as well as derivative market. In the cash market, we have seen FIs selling almost 1,800 crore. And DIs, as usual, continue to remain on the buy side. Yesterday also, they have bought more than 5,000 crore. And in the index futures too, FIs have sold nearly 500 crore. Now, their longs exposure has reduced to 12% versus average of around 15 to 16% that we saw last week. And shorts addition also, just it was a minor addition of around 800. But interesting data coming from the options front. On the call side, 25,900 and 26,000 call. Both these call options were healthy, have seen a huge increase in the open interest. At the same time, premium has increased towards upside. In the contrary, on the put side, we have seen a fall in the premium. So it tells you that upward trajectory remains intact and hitting the 26,000 looks inevitable. Now coming to the support. 25,700 would be the support for Nifty. Resistance remains around 26,000. For Nifty Bank, 57,800 is the key level. That would be the support. Resistance remains near record high, that is 58,600. Lastly, one stock remains in the band, that is Sale. And apart from that, Asian Paints. What are earnings that company has reported? And it has seen fresh longs. But due to strong earnings by Asian Paints, another stock has seen fresh shorts, that is Grasim. So keep an eye on that. And lastly, KPIT Tech has been seeing short covering.
Oh, very interesting, Asian Paints and their impact on the peer companies as well. Sudarshan, thank you for that. Now, India's October CPI inflation has come in at a record low of 0.25%, in line with the CNBC TV 18 poll. The drag came largely from food prices, but would this mean a rate cut from the RBI in their next policy? Lata is joining in with more on this. Lata, good morning.
Well, let's first take a look at the numbers. 0.25% is an all-time low for the new index, CPI index, which started in 2013. But even if you go historically to the last 70 years of Indian CPI numbers, this will be some kind of a record low. The culprit, as you pointed out, is food CPI at minus 5.01. Our poll was minus 4.1. So many people were expecting it, but it was lower than even the market estimates. And with this, the food CPI is negative for the 5th straight month, which means it is lower in year-on-year terms, what we call deflation. And it is likely to be that way for the next 2 months, according to analysts. The CPI for the full, the reason why the inflation is coming down is because even in month-on-month terms, cereals, pulses, milk products, spices are all even. October is lower than September, which is a little unusual because October was Diwali month. One would have assumed much higher consumption. And usually cereals and vegetables start falling from November. In this case, it started falling earlier. And then now from the RBI point of view, the CPI has been under 4% since February. The only month when CPI was above 4% this whole calendar year has been January. And it is likely to remain under 4% for at least another 6 months, according to most economists' forecasts. Now, what this means is the Reserve Bank's mandate, the MPC's mandate, is to keep CPI at 4% plus or minus 2%. Like we told you, it's some 18 months of under 4% that we are looking at continuously, and under 2% for probably, 4 or 5 months, maybe even longer. Therefore, the expectation is that Reserve Bank should cut when it meets on December 5th. But between now and December 5th, there is another big data. November 28th, we get the second quarter GDP data, which almost everyone on the street expects will be above 7%, and some economists believe will be above 7.5%. Now, do you go and cut when growth is so strong, the first half average number coming in at 7.6? Will the Reserve Bank say that I have space to cut, but is there a need to cut? Could that, be a dilemma that the MPC faces and therefore a cut doesn't come? But at the moment, the majority is tilted in favor of a rate cut, and that can be immediately negative for bank stocks. Of course, positive for real estate, durables, etc., but negative for banks.
Lata, thank you for that detailed breakdown of the CPI numbers and, of course, the impact on the RBI subsequent action as well. Take a short break, get you all the updates from the White House on the other side in our special segment, Trump Watch. Welcome back. Now, a 6-week clash between President Donald Trump and congressional Democrats that disrupted flights across the country and delayed food aid for millions is set to end within hours after the House of Representatives passed a temporary funding bill. The House voted 222 to 209 to pass this interim funding, drawing opposition from most Democrats because it does not include their central demand in the shutdown fight, that is the renewal of expiring subsidies for the Affordable Care Act health insurance policies. The White House said that Trump will sign the spending package later tonight, U.S. time, formally ending the shutdown. The U.S. markets, of course, the mixed session on Wall Street. It was another record high for the Dow Jones. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq continued to remain sluggish as rotation continued out of tech stocks. CNBC's Steve Kovac gets us all the wrap of all the action on Wall Street.
U.S. markets were mixed across the major indexes in Wednesday's trading, with the Dow hitting a new record as the government shutdown nears its end. The Dow gained 327 points, the S&P 500 was up 4 points, and that tech-heavy Nasdaq was down 62 points. The Supreme Court on Wednesday set oral arguments over President Trump's authority to fire Fed Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. They will be heard on January 21st. The president moved to fire Cook back in August, citing claims of mortgage fraud. Cook has denied any wrongdoing and sued to block her removal. A judge ruled in September she could not be fired while the suit is pending. And a major milestone for Waymo. The robo-taxi company just announced that for the first time, its driverless cars will now take passengers on freeways in 3 cities. That would be San Francisco, Phoenix, and Los Angeles. The Alphabet-owned company says it will extend freeway trips to more locations over time. While Waymo has driven on some smaller highways, Wednesday's expansion marks the first time the company will take payments from public riders on freeways with higher speed limits.
Steve Kovac, thank you for that update. Let's now listen in to Jefferies' market strategist David Zervos, who voiced out his concerns over the weakening labor market.
I like Challenger. I think ADP does a decent job. I think the revisions are probably the story of the year in the labor market. We've dismissed the 900,000 in 2024 and then the 400 and change thousand for the early part of this year. That's a lot of jobs. We had much more productivity growth than we thought. We had much less job-fueled growth than we thought. And I think that's pointing me to a couple of culprits. The good side, technological advance. That's always great. The bad side, policy's just not stimulative for demand at a time when the job market's weakening.
Getting you the latest now on Trump-related developments, Dia joins in our special segment, Trump Watch.
Good morning. Starting off with fresh remarks from U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said President Donald Trump will only agree to another meeting with Russian leader Vladimir Putin if there's a real opportunity to help end the war in Ukraine. And in a move with direct implications for Asia, the U.S. has sanctioned dozens of firms and individuals supporting Iran's ballistic missile and drone manufacturing industry. The list spans countries including Iran, the UAE, Turkey, China, Hong Kong, India, Germany, and Ukraine. Meanwhile, the European Union is preparing to propose a fresh plan to the U.S. to implement the next phase of their trade agreement reached earlier this summer. And in yet a diplomatic move, Trump has written to Israeli President Isaac Herzog, urging him to legally pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is currently facing charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. Back in the U.S., Trump officials are reportedly preparing to reduce tariffs on everyday essentials like coffee and bananas. The decision follows voter backlash over high living costs that saw Republicans lose several state and local elections. And lastly, controversy continues to shadow the U.S. president as newly released emails from congressional Democrats show American financier and child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein allegedly claimed that Trump spent hours in a house with one of Epstein's victims and was aware of his activities. That's all for today. Now back to you.
Dia, thank you for that update there. Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit India on the 5th of December. Sources have told CNBC TV 18 that he's expected to participate in the India-Russia annual summit and hold bilateral meetings with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Now, the visit comes amidst US President Donald Trump's claims that India has stopped purchasing oil from Russia. Take a short break. News from the commodities market on the other side. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, the National Company Law Tribunal has concluded hearing the Vedanta demerger case. The government is opposed to the demerger. Ashmit is now joining in to take us through all of the action that transpired last evening. Ashmit.
The NCLT concluded hearing arguments and reserved its judgment on Vedanta's plea seeking nod for the demerger. The brief hearing saw the government renew its opposition to demerger of Vedanta. The government claimed that Vedanta is liable to pay the government 16,700 crore rupees. The government argued that pre-demerger, Vedanta would have assets of over 2 lakh crore rupees. thereby giving ample protection to government's claims. The government submitted that post the demerger, the proposed oil and gas entity would have assets of only a little over 29,000 crores. Now, Vedanta countered the government's position, claiming that 29,000 crore rupee assets, that's an asset base that's 1.8x the government's total claims of 16,700 crores. The government further objected that Vedanta had not disclosed claims that are currently being fought over in arbitration. As per the government, Vedanta could be liable to pay anywhere between $222 million to over $1 billion. Vedanta rebutted this by saying that the Indian law, they are not required to recognize or disclose a claim till it is confirmed by a court of law. The government had also claimed earlier that it was against Vedanta mortgaging oil and gas assets for raising funds. Vedanta clarified that it has submitted an NOC by as many as 8 banks confirming that the oil and gas assets are free from any mortgage or lien. The NCLT has reserved its judgment. No clarity has been given on when the judgment can be expected.
Ashmit, thank you for that update. And Manisha Gupta now joins in with all the updates from the commodity space. Manisha, good morning. Is a sharp drop in crude oil prices overnight?
Well, yes, more than 4% of a decline coming in, and this is after the OPEC and the IEA reports that came in yesterday talking about demand and supply in case of 2026. So while IEA says that the world oil and gas demand will continue to grow till 2050, the markets clearly chose to look at OPEC because the global supply demand will matches what they said. OPEC also said that the production will continue to increase, and that could lead to a small surplus going forward in 2026, and that's weighed onto the markets here. Apart from that, it also has to do with gold and silver gains coming in. For that, yet again, gold gained up by 2%, silver was up 3.5% on the higher side. Same is the case with base metal prices, where you saw copper prices gaining up by almost a percentage point. The decline in US dollar, optimism that the historic US government shutdown may soon end, is something that seems to be supporting many of these markets.
Manisha, thank you for that update. Now, in a major breakthrough in the Delhi Red Fort blast case, DNA tests have confirmed that Dr. Omarun Nabi was driving the Hyundai i20 that exploded near the Red Fort metro station on the 10th of November. Now, according to police sources, forensic experts at AIIMS matched DNA samples taken from Umar's remains with those of his mother. Investigators say that these findings strengthen the link between Umar and the suspected terror module behind the explosion. And with that, we take your leave on this edition of Power Breakfast. From me and the team, thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call on the other side to set you up for today's trade.